Welcome to today's video. In this video, I'm going to be covering your burning questions. Frequently asked questions that I get from buyers who are looking to buy a home in Tucson, Arizona. And as a bonus, when you watch this video in its entirety, all the way through, I'm going to share a secret with you from my 15 years of experience as both a realtor and an appraiser in Tucson, and over 2,000 people I've helped buy or sell a home. I'm going to share with you the 3 mistakes that I see buyers make that end up haunting them years later. You're definitely not going to want to miss that, so you can avoid those 3 mistakes happening to you. Let's jump in. Hey, I'm Rich, and if this is your first time to the channel and you want to know all there is to know about lifestyle, real estate, and new builds in Tucson, Arizona, and surrounding areas, then you have landed on the right YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for me and tap the bell for notifications so you can be the very first to learn everything that you want to know. I'm pretty excited to jump into this list because these are definitely some questions that add a lot of insight into the buyer's process, the whole process of making a decision on what home to buy and the time frame and who to hire and all of that. There's so many decisions that buyers have to wrestle with, and I'm empathetic to that because I've bought and sold several pieces of real estate myself, and as I've mentioned, I've helped over 2,000 other people do the same thing, both in my appraisal business and as a real estate agent. So I get it. I'm right there with you. This list of questions that I get and the answers that I provide will definitely help put you at ease, give you some confidence and insight, and most likely this will take 80% of your questions away. Any remaining questions, make sure you comment below so that I can keep tabs. I'll respond directly in the comments to your question. That way I'm keeping track of what questions people have, and you'll get a response right there in this video. So first up, the number one question that I get asked the most is, how much is my down payment? And the simple answer is, it depends on the type of loan program that you are planning to use. Now, whether this is the first house you've bought or whether this is the 10th house you've bought, there are different types of loan programs that you can choose from. Typically, they're going to be selected, or the best program loan type for you will be based on your credit history, your credit score, what your debt and income ratios look like, whether you own a house already or several houses already. But to name a couple of the most common loan programs, you've got a conventional, FHA, VA, USDA. Those are some of the more common types of loans that we see today, and each one has a different type of loan down payment that is required. Now, the down payment is just simply what additional cash you're required to bring to the table, and it's usually in a percentage of the sales price. So if you're a veteran, you can take advantage of the VA loan program, for instance, and that is a 0% down. That's the minimum. You can certainly put down more, but the minimum is you don't have to put down anything. With FHA, for instance, your loan would require that you put down a minimum of 3.5% down. So $100,000 house, just for easy math, would be $3,500 down payment. Conventional, I've seen as low as 3%, and recently it has kind of fluctuated up to about 5% of the sales price. So again, $100,000 house purchase would mean that you're putting $5,000 down. Now, the type of loan program I've talked about can vary. The types of, or which loan program, conventional in particular, that loan program can kind of fluctuate in terms of what the minimum down payment is. VA, USDA are both 0% down programs. USDA is very restrictive in terms of the type of location, the location of the property that qualifies for that type of funding and that type of loan. FHA has been very consistent at 3.5% down. So if you have more questions on that, feel free. If you have any questions on any of these, all my contact information is below. You can call, text, email, schedule a free Zoom consult with the link in the description. We can get some FaceTime and I can be sure that I answer all of your questions. So as I go through this list, I'll just remind you that I'm always here as a resource. The second question that I get asked the most are there any buyer programs specific to first-time home buyers? And the answer is yes. Oftentimes there are government-assisted programs that come out that help and are targeted to first-time home buyers. Now, there's several different programs that operate in a lot of different ways, but commonly what I see is these down payment assistance programs. The lenders will call them DPA, down payment assistance program. Now, what essentially that means is that as a first-time home buyer, you could qualify for a down payment assistance where either there's a concession made from the seller of the home that you buy. That would be my job as your agent to negotiate that commission or that compensation to be paid towards your loan program and offset your down payment. Or there's sometimes a government fund that is provided that allows some of your down payment or all of your down payment to be allocated from that fund itself. So the short answer is yes, there very frequently are first-time homebuyer programs available for you if you fit that category, and they can be incredible things to take advantage of. The very first house that I bought was a first-time homebuyer program that I utilized, and I ended up taking advantage of some down payment assistance program, and it ended up working out beautifully. I bought that house in 2015. I still have that house today, and it works out as a great rental property for me. Next up on the list is, what are the best neighborhoods that I should be considering to buy in? Now, there are a lot of great neighborhoods in Tucson. I have made several videos highlighting neighborhoods, and I'll leave those links in the description. And those are videos showing you which neighborhoods personally I think are some of the coolest neighborhoods to consider, some of the best neighborhoods to consider. If I was looking to move in different places of Tucson, those are the neighborhoods that I personally would feel really excited about. So you can check those videos out. I'll leave a link in the description, and those will be easy to find. But neighborhoods, there is a diverse group of neighborhoods to choose from. And I'll cover a lot of that in those videos, so make sure you check those out. Now, if you're looking for neighborhoods more specific to a price point, then I can definitely put a list of homes together, a list of neighborhoods together for you. I've lived in Tucson my entire life. I've worked professionally in real estate for over 15 years in real estate. And I've appraised and sold thousands of homes in Tucson in all the neighborhoods. So if you have a certain price point in mind and you want to know, hey, what are the best neighborhoods under 500,000, or what are the best neighborhoods under 300,000, then shoot me an email. Grab my email, give me a little info in the area, price point that you're looking for, and I'd be happy to respond to that email and give you some local insight, my 15 years of experience put to work for you, and just sharing some information to help guide you along your way. Feel free to grab my information in the description to do that. Next up, question that I get is, how long does a home buying process take? Now, as you might imagine, it's very subjective. We've got kind of two pieces of the home buying process that I'm going to break down. The first is the identification process, right? Before we get you into contract on the house that you love, there's kind of the research phase where we sit down, we consult with you, we find out exactly, we make like a wants and needs. The wants are going to be kind of like, hey, these would be really nice if we could find this within all of our budget and our other criteria, but these are the necessities. These are the things that have to be hit. So we'll do that comparative analysis. We'll get a game plan together. We'll start sending you homes, and that whole process from start to finish, from the moment we have our first consultation to the moment that we end up writing a contract and getting it accepted, most of the time it will be less than 60 days. There are extenuating circumstances where it takes, we have a consult and then the next day we're looking at homes and we're in contract in 2 days. There are also extenuating circumstances where, we're looking for something very specific. I can think of a buyer right now that we're working with where we've been working with her for 6 or 7 months, and she's looking for something very, very specific. She's very patient. She's in a situation where she doesn't have a whole lot of urgency. She knows exactly what she wants, and we know exactly what she wants, and we're working really hard to kind of provide her those options. So she's an example. We've got examples on both sides of that spectrum, but generally speaking, most people are going to find what they want. We're going to help them find exactly what they want, get into contract on it in less than 60 days. Now, the next phase of that is once you're in contract, how long does it take to close when you actually get the keys to your house? Great question. Now, typically, depending on the loan program, the soonest you can close is about 30 days. Again, there's extenuating circumstances. I've closed homes and had lenders closed homes in as little as 2 weeks with a loan, appraisal, contingency, all that sort of stuff, all the hoops you got to jump through. But it's not typical. So typical is a minimum of 30 days and typical is a maximum of 60 days. So to kind of put this whole thing together, you're looking at from looking at a home, it's going to be about 30 to 60 days. And then once you're in contract and you're waiting to close, that's probably another 30 to 60 days. So all in all, probably 60 to 120 days. All right, next up is, should I get a home inspection on my home? Answer for that is absolutely yes. I'll be talking about this in more length in other videos, but the home inspection is really, really critical. The Arizona purchase contract allows buyers like you to purchase a piece of real estate, to write a contract for the purchase of a piece of real estate, and then have by default 10 days to conduct what's called due diligence. That's your inspection period. That gives you permission to inspect any and all components of the house that you think would be material to you making a decision to move forward. The cool thing is the way our contract operates in Arizona, you can write that offer, get it accepted, and then in that 10-day inspection period, you can cancel the contract completely free of any penalty for any reason. I'm serious, like barking dogs next door, neighbor smokes, you just didn't like the way the wind was blowing. I've had people cancel because they found out that the sun in the backyard was not, there just wasn't enough shade in the backyard. Or I've had people cancel because their furniture, when they took measurements, was too large for the living room and it wasn't going to be able to be oriented correctly. So in the inspection period is your time to do your due diligence. Now, part of that is a home inspection, because the home inspection is really going to help us uncover anything and everything about the house. It's like taking a used car to a mechanic for them to do a full diagnostic on it before you buy it. That is really critical, because once you've purchased it, that could be a big problem down the road if we didn't know about sewer issues, electrical issues, flooding, anything and everything. This home inspection report typically is going to cover about 1,000 different components of the home, from electrical, foundation, plumbing, roof, structural, cosmetic, and everything in between. So it's really critical. It's a very, very affordable type of thing, less than $500 in most cases, and it could save you thousands and thousands of dollars. So absolutely something that is definitely recommended. However, it is not required. Typically, it is up to you to make the decision on what inspector you want to use. You're not required to use any inspector. You're not required to have an inspector at all. And if you want, you certainly could hire your own inspector, do your own research. Typically for our buyers, we have 2 or 3 inspectors that we've used for years. They're very reputable. Several of them are former contractors with 15, 20 years of experience in contracting that jumped over, so they really know the ins and outs of homes. We usually will offer them as inspectors for you to consider, and most of the time buyers ended up going with them, and they are very, very happy with their experience with them. So if you need home inspectors, you can reach out to me directly. Again, all my contact information is in the description. Grab my contact, shoot me a text, email, call, whatever is more convenient for you, and I'll link you up with some great resources for home inspectors. All right, next up is going to be, what are the common closing costs in Tucson? How much are they, and can they be negotiated? So common closing costs are going to consist of your title policy, your lender fees, your appraisal fees, any other fees associated with the transaction, origination fees. There's no attorney fees because we're not an attorney state in Arizona. So if you're moving from a place where you're used to working with attorneys and that being part of your closing costs, luckily you're going to save the money there. So hopefully that'll buy you a nice steak dinner somewhere instead of having to spend it on your house. But that generally is what makes up the closing costs when you end up buying a home. Now, in addition to that, as of August of 2024, there has been a change regarding compensation to your agent, the buyer's agent that ends up representing you. Now, that compensation agreement that you enter into before getting in a contract on your house, that will spell out exactly what the compensation your agent is going to be paid. And that is a required document for your agent to have in place before you write the offer. Now, that could be considered part of your closing costs, but to be honest with you, all of our clients sign compensation agreements before we end up showing them any houses. They have to. Legally, if my mom once calls me up and says, Rich, I want to go see a house, I have to say, Mom, I'd love to show it to you. I have to send this document. I have to have you sign it and review it because I have to have this filed with my broker before I can show you anything. So even for my own mom, I would have to do the same thing. But really, a great agent like us, we're going to negotiate to the best of our ability and do our best to get that compensation paid for. We have several different ways of doing that in negotiation. And we share that with our clients as 3 different strategies to help take that cost, that compensation cost away from our buyer and find that compensation somewhere else through negotiation for them. Now, that kind of goes along with the closing costs, the remaining closing costs, like I mentioned, the title insurance, appraisal fees, origination fees from the lender, all of those additional fees that buyers have. Those can also be negotiated from the seller in a form of what's called a seller concession. That essentially just means that the seller is agreeing to make a concession at the time of closing towards the buyer's closing costs. So yes, that can all be negotiated as well. It really goes back to who you hire matters. And for that reason, I really think that that's why a lot of people have chosen to hire myself and our team in order to help represent them. It's such a big negotiation. I mean, buying a house is the biggest financial decision any of us get to make. So if you have the freedom to hire who you want, you might as well hire the best, the person with the best track record in negotiating, because that is really where the biggest value is provided from the agent that you hire. Next up is, what factors should I consider when I'm shopping for lenders? And much like real estate agents, there's a ton of options when it comes to lenders. And much like real estate agents, they're not all created equal, unfortunately. You really want to make sure you've got an idea of how to do due diligence, how to properly establish whether this lender is going to be credible or not. I'll give you a couple pointers, having worked for over 15 years in the real estate industry, having worked with hundreds of different mortgage lenders. I have had a much better experience with local lenders. Now, they can work for a national branch, but if the lender themselves isn't local, then it can create some troubles. One of the biggest differences that I see in, say, somebody using Chase Bank, and I'm not picking on Chase, I bank with Chase, so this isn't anything personal against Chase or Wells Fargo or anything like that. This is just strictly my perspective on using Chase, Wells Fargo, Quicken Loans, the big lending companies who has someone that's working for you but is not really local to Tucson. First off, they tend to be really difficult to get a hold of. They typically are working a 9 to 5. They're not available on weekends. They may not return. I've had really bad experiences with them returning calls after business hours. And oftentimes, let's face it, when we need to write an offer for you, when we find the perfect house, we don't want to wait, because it gives another buyer a chance to take the property out from under us. And that would mean that we need a pre-qual right away, a pre-qualification letter from this lender right away. And we might need questions answered from this lender, and we might need to massage the numbers a little bit to make sure that you have questions answered before moving forward, and we have an updated pre-qualification letter. We can't do that if someone's clocking out at 5 o'clock and we're going to see homes after 5 o'clock when you get off of work. So I have seen that be the biggest problem with using a Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, that sort of thing. Again, not picking on the big banks. I'm just sharing my experience working with them in comparison to a local lender. Here locally, some great lending firms are like Fairway Mortgage, Guild Mortgage, Nova Home Loans, Summit Funding. So those are just to name a few. Again, not affiliated with any of those companies, but I have worked with all of them. And there's a lot of reputable lenders that work at all of those companies. If you want a short list of great lenders that I've worked with for many, many years, very experienced, top tier customer service, again, grab my contact information, text, call, email, whatever is convenient for you. Just tell me what you need, what type of resources, what questions you have, and I'll make sure I respond with that sort of information so that you have it, okay? As you are shopping for lenders and having conversations with lenders, a couple things to keep in mind. Each lender is going to have a little bit of a different system in terms of the rates that they provide may be a little bit different. And so shopping lenders is often something that buyers decide to do, because what they will establish is that some lenders will have a little bit of a difference in what their interest rate is. They might have a difference in what their loan costs are, what the appraisal costs are, definitely a difference in like customer service and communication. So just those are basic kind of interview points to make when you're shopping for a lender. If you're doing it on your own, if you reach out to me, trust me, the people that I'm going to refer to you are people that have been tried, true, tested for years. I know that they're going to provide the same level of service that I provide clients and that our team provides clients. So rest assured, you're going to be in really good hands. All right, so this one is a big one. I get a lot of questions about this one. How are property taxes calculated in Tucson, and approximately how much are they? Now, we work with a lot of people that are relocating from out of state. And to be honest with you, most of them are moving from areas that are way higher in tax rate and property taxes than we have here. Like sometimes like a 30% of what they're used to paying is what they end up paying in Tucson. So it's just kind of mind-blowing to a lot of people. We are one of the lowest property tax in the US. And so it's pretty common. If you're moving from anywhere outside of Arizona, you're probably paying more in property tax than what we currently, or what you will pay once we help you buy a house. Now, generally speaking, each property in each specific area of Tucson and the greater Tucson area varies slightly. Property tax rates are going up, over time. And so I couldn't give you an exact number. What I can say is that I run what's called net sheet calculations for people all the time. That really, like for sellers specifically, for our seller clients that I'm working with, I help them understand exactly, if we sell at this price, this is all of the fees and everything that you need to be taken into account of, and including your prepaid taxes. Now, generally speaking, having done endless amount of those calculations over 15 years, what I have determined is that generally speaking, about 0.75% for yearly taxes is pretty accurate. Now, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be plus or minus, $500 or $1,000 a year. It's not huge, but 0.75%. So if you know what your price of the home that you're looking to buy is, for simple math, and again, don't quote this number, this is just a ballpark. It would be, say, your price of the home that you're looking at purchasing, and then multiply that by 0.0075. That'll give you 0.75%, and whatever that number is should generally get you in the ballpark of what your annual property tax would be on that property. Now, again, that's not for commercial real estate, manufactured home. It could really vary, but generally speaking, for a residential home in Tucson, 0.0075 multiplied by your purchase price or proposed purchase price will get you in the general vicinity. Now, property taxes are paid twice a year, and it's based on the assessed value. The assessed value is determined by the Pima County Assessor's Office, and the assessed value is not the appraised value. Two different values. Similar process, but they are two different types of values. Oftentimes, your market value, what would be considered your appraised value, your actual market value, and what the Pima County assessor's assessed value is, those numbers can vary widely. And generally, I would say the assessed value tends to be lower than the actual market value. There are circumstances where that's not true, but overall, in general, that's exactly what I see in my experience. But it does depend. Your assessed value from Pima County is what they're using as a basis for their tax valuation. And it depends on factors like the location, the overall condition, the size of the home, all that sort of stuff that would be considered in, say, a normal appraisal, but they're crunching the numbers a little bit different. All right, next question. Honestly, I think a lot of people don't know this, and I think it makes for a lot of excitement once I explain this and once they discover this. When is your first mortgage payment due? Now, most people would assume I buy my house today, my first mortgage payment is due next month on the 1st. It actually skips a month. So if you buy a house, say in January, your first mortgage payment isn't going to be due until March. So it skips an entire month. That really helps a lot of people who are in a situation where primarily where they're renting. If they're renting a house and they're wanting to eliminate double payments, the cool thing is that they can end their lease on the month that they close on their house. They're not going to have a mortgage payment for, almost 2 months. And that allows them to make that move. It can also be helpful for people who have another house that they're moving from that they own and don't want to sell it yet. So it kind of gives them maybe 60 days to get the house they're leaving, the departing house, under contract for someone else to purchase it, sell it. It gives them about 60 days to kind of free themselves of that property. Now, if you have a home that you own currently and you're considering buying a home, then this one is definitely for you, because this question is, if I own a house currently, do I have to sell this house before I buy the new one? And the answer is, it really depends on your qualification. There's two things that we need to establish in order to figure out the answer to that question. And that would be a conversation with a lender to determine one of two routes. Either you would qualify based on your finances, you would qualify to purchase the next house non-contingent, meaning that the purchase of the house that you want to buy is not contingent on the sale of your existing house. So you could qualify for both houses. You don't have to keep them. You could sell one later, never sell it, rent it, whatever. But from the lender's perspective, they're saying, hey, we'll give you the loan on the new house. You can decide to keep the old house or not. It doesn't matter to us. That's one route. The other route, and honestly, I would say it's kind of 50-50. The other route is where you qualify contingent. So the only way that you qualify for the purchase of the next house is based on the original house, the house you currently live in, selling first before you can purchase the second one. That's called contingent. The purchase of your new property is contingent on the sale of your existing house. Those are the two directions that we help people through all the time. Non-contingent, meaning they don't have to sell their original house first, or contingent, meaning they do. And there's some additional things, there's some additional challenges or hoops that we have to jump through with clients in order to accomplish either or. We've made this process super simple. We've outlined it so it makes a lot of sense. And to our clients that work with us, it feels very streamlined, very simplified, because we've got great systems that help bridge these gaps either way. But lining up the closing dates, like we just had a client that is contingent. They have to sell their existing house before they can purchase another one. We lined all of that up, including the new house they want to buy. And what we did was negotiate a special term that allows them to close on their current house that they've lived in for a while. Close on that so they get their funds and they can then close on their new house. So technically they've closed on the house that they're living on, they've sold that, and they've bought their new house, but we negotiated them the ability to stay and live in their old house where all their belongings are located for an additional week after closing. What that did is it gave them a week's time to move their kids, their furniture, all their stuff leisurely over to the next house and just gives them a lot of flexibility and peace of mind, knowing that they don't have to what are we going to do? Pack up all of our stuff and then what? Live in a hotel room? What do we do with all our stuff? It just avoids a lot of those challenges. So again, if you own a house and you're looking at buying a house or considering buying a house, you definitely want to talk to someone who has helped a lot of sellers do that in the process. Grab my contact information. We should definitely chat because I have some strategies that are really going to make your life a lot easier. They're free to hear what I've got to say, and I think after hearing it, you'll have a lot more confidence on how to piece all of this together. All right, this next one is, can I buy a house virtually if I don't live in Tucson? The answer is yes. We have worked with a lot of people who are relocating from other places outside of Tucson or even outside of Arizona. We've also helped a lot of people buy houses without them ever seeing them in person first. Believe it or not, a lot of people prefer, maybe not a lot, but we've had maybe 30% of our buyers who are totally okay not seeing the house. We walk through FaceTime videos, we send them photos, videos. We have 3D cameras that we're using to assist them, anything and everything. They'll sometimes have family members that live locally that can go there and be kind of a proxy for them to walk through. So they do a lot of due diligence, even though they haven't seen it with their own eyes. They put a lot of trust in us. We really work hard to honor that trust. They might bring a family member in. And overall, we've had great experience helping people buy completely virtually without ever seeing the house before they purchase. And that is something that is legal. You can do. We have a great track record with it. So if you live out of state and it's kind of a hassle, you want to buy a house, but you're not sure that you're going to be able to make it to see all the houses, we can conduct all of our showings virtually. You can sign all the documents from wherever you live. We can coordinate with title companies to be able to meet with you wherever you're located and sign the closing documents. We've closed a home recently with a seller a buyer, who was located in Japan. And he was out there for work. He couldn't make it, but he wanted to close. And we coordinated everything from Japan. So pretty cool and gives us a lot of flexibility no matter what your situation is. So I am very curious. Please comment below what questions you still have that I haven't answered. Maybe it's something in here, maybe it's a little bit of a nuance to a question that I've already covered, or maybe it's an entirely new question. Leave that comment. I will personally respond to that comment and give you the answers that you're looking for. And it will also be probably helpful for the other people watching the video. So thanks for leaving that comment and kind of playing along. All right, next up, I'm going to share with you the 3 mistakes that I see buyers make that absolutely haunt them years later. But before that, I just wanted to remind you that my family has lived in Tucson for 150 years. And because of that, it's the city that I know best and the city that I love the most. And I've been a certified real estate appraiser and a realtor for over 15 years. I get calls and texts every day from people who are making a move, and I love helping people through that process. So whether you're moving in a week or a year, let's get connected. Grab my contact information, schedule a free Zoom consult so I can get face-to-face with you and answer all of your questions, and we can get introduced. Now, without any further hesitation, here are the 3 mistakes you definitely want to avoid. The first one is not buying a home in the right location. Now, this one might seem obvious, but let me kind of explain what I mean. Having worked with buyers for so many years, I stay in a long-term relationship with the people that I work with. Many of them become really, really close friends. And because of that, I get to hear, I'm the person that they call when they need to move. And sometimes it's self-inflicted. And this number one mistake is location. That is the number one most self-inflicted mistake that I see buyers make. And I can trace it back to when I'm showing them homes and they're considering, hey, should we buy here? Should we buy there? Maybe it's 2 different neighborhoods. Maybe it's 2 completely different sides of town. And I know their situation pretty in depth, but ultimately, and I'm making suggestions to them along the way, but ultimately it's their decision, right? It's your decision as a buyer where you decide to live. But oftentimes buyers are faced with this decision of, do we live a little bit further out from where we really want to, save some money, maybe get a bigger house for the same price, maybe a little bit more land, but it's a little bit more inconvenient? Or do we pay a little bit more, get a little bit of a smaller house, but we're in that location that we really, really want to be in? And that is the intersection that I think many of us buyers are at. I certainly have been there as a buyer as well, so I get it. And I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make, is they make a sacrifice on location for other things that aren't as important, and they end up regretting it years later. So that being said, that's an easy one to avoid. I'm sharing this information with you right off the bat, having seen people make the decision, being the guy that's been part of that decision-making process. They ultimately make the decision, but I provide all the information, and they make the decision, and then I stay in touch and stay in relationships with them for years later. And then they call me and say, Rich, we finally have had enough. We're done. We should have never bought in this location. We hate to do it, but we're going to move everything. We need to sell this place, and you got to help us find another house. And this time we're going to buy in that neighborhood we should have in the first place. So avoid that happening to you. Again, this is part of the consultative approach that I take with clients to help them. And I think that this nugget will definitely help you. At number 2, buying a home that's too small and they can't grow into. Life circumstances happen, life events change, multi-generational things happen where you got to bring, in-laws in, or you've got kids that were no longer living with you. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, they are living with you. And this is the second biggest mistake that I see buyers make that absolutely haunts them, because if they think too small and they don't account for some life changes and having some flexibility in their living situation, more often what I see is a kid that comes back to stay with them, or they've got a parent that needs to be close, right? And they need that extra space for that person to live with them, so they can keep them close and keep eyes on them, make sure that they're safe. And so in either situation, I have gotten the call several times from people who were convinced that they really could downsize, and they did, and it worked until it didn't. And ultimately they call and say, hey, situation's changed. We need to sell and buy a bigger place. So that is mistake number 2. And mistake number 3, I touched on it in the earlier questions, but that one is not getting a home inspection. I know, shocker, not getting a home inspection. I think most of the people watching this video would probably see the home inspection as definitely something that you should do. But if you're considering, maybe not, I'll check it out if it's worth it. Maybe I won't do it. I highly, highly recommend it. And some of the biggest mistakes that I've seen buyers make is when they've decided not to get a home inspection. It is rare, but I have seen that can cause some serious heartache. So don't let that be you. That's a really easy one to prevent. And I'm going to be there as a resource to help remind you why it's so important as well. So there you go. Now you have the answers to all of your burning questions. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up to help us out and help the channel out. Make sure you're subscribed for more. And as an important reminder, I want to leave you with this. The outcome of your life will be determined by what you allow from yourself. Let that sink in, toss that around upstairs for a little bit. And remember, if you're planning on buying or selling a home in the next 12 months, let's get connected. All my contact information is below. Text message or scheduling a Zoom video call right through the link in the description are probably the 2 easiest ways to go about doing that. And until next time, I hope to see you around the neighborhood.